You're welcome to day 6 of my series 23 till I'm 23, and I'm more than glad to have you come back here. Honestly, if you've been following this series, I'm very honored. I'm actually very honored to have you stay with me. You're welcome again to Staying with Eve, and let's get right into the lesson for today. Today's lesson is the lesson on learning to forgive yourself. Now, to drive home this point, let me paint two scenarios. Have you ever had times in your life when, as an adult, right, you're just seated back and then you remember something very crazy that you did while you were young? Or maybe even as an adult, just remember a very funny event and then you're like, hi god, that was very stupid, and then you laugh and you're like, chai god. You just laugh, you find it very funny. Those moments are, thinking about them now, they seemed stupid and they are just funny to you. That's scenario one. Now scenario two, you're seated and you're just thinking, going into retrospection, and then a thought comes to mind of something you must have done or something you did previously, and the reaction is different. So this time you're not all hearty, you're not all laughing, you're not easily calling yourself stupid, but rather in this moment you're sober. Like a part of you wants to cry and you're like, why did I even do this in the first place? Like, how could I be so stupid? How could I have done this? Now this second scenario is referring to some things that you might have done in the past that you really want to take back because that is how much you regret having done them. They are so strong a regret that you can't even share it to other people, and you're just holding them in and you're like, I wish I could take this back. Now, in 23 years of my life, I've experienced those two different scenarios. The one where you're very hearty and the one where you're very sober and you're like, I really wish I can take this scenario back, take it away from my life. But then the thing that you should first of all come to accept is the fact that the mistake has been made. Some of them might not actually be mistakes. Mistakes is something that you do without even realizing, but then some of them might have been pre-thought actions, so they are not necessarily mistakes, but now that you know better, you regret those actions. Then there are some that might actually have been mistakes. The first step in this whole forgiving yourself thing that I've learned is to not deny those mistakes. They actually did happen. Now the first step is to acknowledge them. A lot of us are living in denial of things that we have done in the past. You did them is that you did them. So you denying them will not necessarily take them away. They've been done is that they've been done. So it's to come to the acceptance of the fact that yes, I made this mistake. Yes, I used to be this kind of person. Yes, I used to be there before. But right now, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not there again. And I'm not going back anymore. Acknowledging this, it does something to you, right? And even though you might have repented from those past actions or mistakes that you might have made, there's still a part of you that might be longing to really get them back and erase them, clean it. But don't forget that those mistakes have already become footprints on the sand of time, and they will forever remain memories to maybe the people that you did bad to, all of that, you get. But that's where forgiving yourself first comes in. You'd have to learn to forgive yourself first before expecting other people to forgive you, and that's usually the hardest part. Someone might easily forgive you for something that you did wrongly to them, but then a part of you just keeps bringing it up and up and up and up, and then you're soaked up in guilt and soaked up in shame and just many things, many feelings and all of that. But then there's solace. I find solace in the story of Paul in the Bible. Yes, so the story of Paul, I think I came across an Instagram post one time. I was looking for it, but I couldn't find it, so that I'll make reference to it. And the lady was laying emphasis on the fact that Paul would have not necessarily done so much work, so much of God's work, if he hadn't forgiven himself. We see the story of Paul in the Bible. We see that he was part of the people that were very much involved in persecuting the believers, then the early believers, persecuting them. Even when they had killed Stephen, they laid their clothes at his feet. He eventually had an encounter that changed his life for the better. And I think Paul was a very much self aware person because he got to understand how much forgiveness had been made available to him by God Himself. He did not spend so much time dwelling on the things that he had done, and he never really denied them. He acknowledged the fact that he did all of those things. However, he knew where he was currently at. He knew his new position, he knew his new decision, and he stayed there. He accepted how much transformation was available in God and just went with it. Now, it's very important to accept the redemption power of God as well as the power of His grace. Beyond forgiving yourself, it's also very important to accept God's forgiveness. I mean, when you realize that God has even forgiven you for the worst sins that you've ever done, that should be enough solace, first off. So, accepting God's forgiveness comes first. And after having accepted God's forgiveness, there's a room for you to allow Him transform you into a better version of yourself that is beyond the mistakes that you might have made. Learn to forgive yourself. Don't dwell on those things. Don't dwell on the things that you've done in the past. And not dwelling on them does not mean you're denying it. Saying I did not do this is very different from saying I did this, yes, but I'm not that person anymore. They're two different things. So beyond your mistakes, there's forgiveness and there's a choice to not go back to them. That's very necessary. Now, this is a lesson that I've learned in 23 years of my life, and I'm still learning. And I hope that I'll run with them, as well as you too, that you'd run with them. Bye guys, and thank you for sticking around. I'm so much grateful to those of you that have stayed with me from day 1 to day 6. I do not take it for granted. Thank you guys. I love you.